welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we start this episode, I want to remind everybody that if you want to hang out with us a little bit on Facebook, you can find us at From the Shadows podcast on Facebook or our forum page, After the Shadows. You can interact with us, post some stuff. People do it all the time. You can send us messages. You can find me on Instagram, Shane Grove Author, or at From the Shadows Podcast on Instagram. DM us there if you want to get a hold of us, or you can do it the old-fashioned way. Go on to the FromTheShadowsPodcast.com website, hit the contact button, send me an email. I will read it, get back to you, especially if you have a story you want to share and you might want to come on and share it with our listeners. And also, if you can't get enough of the free stuff, you can always go to our Patreon page. There's bonus episodes. Usually our episodes are up early and they're always commercial free on Patreon. And I want to thank our newest Patreon member, Scott. So thanks, Scott, for joining in on all the Patreon fun, or the allure of maybe there being a lot of Patreon fun. I don't know which it is. So as I bring on today's guest, I knew we were going to talk about Bigfoot, but I didn't know we were going to talk about my hometown. So I'm kind of excited to have on a fellow Crawford Countyan native. Rusty, welcome to the From the Shadows podcast.
Thanks, Shane. It's good to be here.
Well, okay, so we usually start from the beginning, okay? And it just so happened your beginning, when you started describing it to me, was almost similar to kind of some of my beginning in life. It took me by surprise. So Rusty, share with everybody a little bit about yourself, and like why we would even have you on the show, and then how you got interested in the subject that we're going to talk about.
Well, I imagine when we got in contact, the idea was that I could come on, kind of share my time in the BFRO in the 2000s and till about 2015, 16. Couple specific reports that had to do with folks that had problematic Bigfoot issues around their house. And I'll share a couple of my incidents, although they're very inconclusive and very minor.
I don't think in my book, nothing's minor. But of course, you have a different, you're going out, we're going out and investigating some major sightings and instances. And so you might be jaded a little bit and think some stuff is minor, when to the normal person, it would be something major. So I don't want anybody to think that anything's minor when it comes to Bigfoot.
All right. Yeah, probably over the course of my time there, I was involved in probably 40 report investigations. Probably about half of them were on site, and half of them were just talking with people on the phone on a repeated basis to kind of peel back the onion and get to the truth.
So before we get into that, I want to tell everybody your origin story, and then we can, because I think a lot of people in our generation, you're a little bit older than me, but this group of this age range, I think a lot of them go back to this similar thing that you're going to say.
Yeah. My Bigfoot origin story, it's actually centered in the bratwurst capital of America, undisputed. In a barber shop. And back in the day, you didn't have online registrations or appointments. You just showed up and you waited your time, and you saw who come in after you, and those people were behind you. And then eventually the chair would open up and it was yours. And I was probably about 11, maybe late tens. And I had kind of graduated, gone through the comic books, and decided, oh, I'm going to leaf through, the grown-up magazines that were there in the waiting room. And I found the Argosy magazine that had the Patterson Gimlin article. And I think that really is the seedling for many of our generation in terms of Bigfoot. It was interesting because I was just kind of reading the magazine, and as it used to be in those barbershops, the men were talking, kids were being quiet, reading, quiet, and trying to stay under the radar. And a gentleman from Kentucky looked over at me and he goes, "You don't want to mess with those boogers." And I kind of gave him a quizzical look, and he said something about one of his relatives had a meetup with a booger down in Kentucky, which I later learned is one of their versions of Bigfoot. And a little bit of discussion among the men ensued. And that part was it was interesting to kind of see how they interacted with each other, some with open minds, others with very closed minds, and some straddling the fence. And I pretty much put Bigfoot out of my mind after that. I remember the Big Head incident around Butler, Ohio. That hit the news journal, and I was like, oh, Bigfoot again. And then, like many of our generation, I forgot about it until about 1999 when I put Bigfoot in Ohio into a search engine, and up popped the BFRO site, and I started reading it and went, whoa, there's quite a bit of reports from this area. I also found a line to a Don Keating's. He used to hold monthly meetings. And so I went to a couple of those monthly meetings, eventually went to his annual conference. I met some folks, and I'd say 2002, I got an opportunity to be a researcher for the BFRO, and had access to their database and the reports coming in, and just went after it after that for about 15 years.
I'm sitting here and listening, and how amazing is it that you are reading an article on Bigfoot and there's a dude in the barbershop that seemingly has some first or secondhand knowledge, and isn't just like, oh, that's not that's not real. Like, you might as well be reading that comic book. You know what I'm saying? That to me would be like, okay, really? Tell me so I would know how you could. I mean, of course, where we grew up, okay, there's no, like you said, there was no Bigfoot reports here. I'd never heard of the Minerva monster. And that made national news, but it wasn't the national news that we got to watch. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it is amazing to me that, all the time I'm growing up, I'm like a lot of other people. I'm thinking this is just something in the Pacific Northwest. How could it be here in Ohio? Nothing happens in Ohio, except the Bratwurst Festival once every year. And, so I would have been blown away to have any kind of adult say, yeah, you got to watch out for those, So, but that's a cool memory. And when you started, and I think I mentioned when you started talking about it, because I got my hair cut at the same place as a young kid, and I could start the smells of that place came back. Lester sitting there with a cigarette smoking in your face as he was cutting your hair. So it's fantastic. So on to the BFRO. So you've got access to these reports. What is that like? Like, did you have to do any training or anything, or was it just like, hey, go talk to these people and see what you can figure out?
Well, there is a kind of a training outline and some checklists and things like that within the site in terms of, coaching for new investigators, I guess you would call it. And they would put us under the wing of somebody that was more experienced. And then ultimately, when you submitted a report, it would go through an editor and a kind of a peer review just to make sure that it was reasonable conclusions and, it fit the categories that it should, and that, the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed type of thing. So, but,
Okay.
it was a live database. As people put reports in, you could go in, it would show you the newest reports. I limited the geography mostly to Ohio, went into West Virginia a couple times, but, and some of them were, I saw Bigfoot wearing my mother's, pajamas running outside the house. And, they clearly kids messing around and seeing if they get a call or somebody take them seriously. But, once you weeded through that, there were some reports in there that, at least demanded some attention and some, response. And a lot of the ones that I tried to get involved with were ones where there were families involved, and the families, they were, I don't know if you'd call it, they were kind of under duress. They were very concerned about what was going on around their property. And those are the ones that I tried to make sure that I prioritized when I saw them to get a response out to those folks and maybe give them some ideas, and oftentimes go on site with those.
So which do you want to share a couple of the instances that really stand out that that left you maybe scratching your head or wishing you could investigate more?
Sure. There's really three that stand out in terms of households, properties where people were, having some issues with a Bigfoot. And I'm pretty sure it was a Bigfoot. One was at Hocking Ridge. It's down by Athens, Ohio. If you get south of Athens, it's the valley that's created by the Hocking River.
Okay.
Pretty remote, not far from Wayne. Actually, that property eventually abutted in the back to Wayne Forest. The family had, I don't know if they'd clear cut the property or if somebody else had, probably about 5 or 6 acres of clear cut on this very steep ridge line. And they had probably, it took them a bulldozer, but they pulled a modular home up the ridge line, got it up on top. Okay. And they were finding a lot of footprints around their house. That was kind of the start of things for them. There wasn't much soil there. It was a sandstone ridge with a mixture of sand and clay on top. So it was both acceptable to footprints, but also acceptable to erosion. And I think some of what they were seeing was erosion, but there were clearly footprints there also, especially in the back where the house was protected by trees, and you could, I found a few very clear footprints. Actually, one of them, that's in the report, a picture of them. They had 3 generations lived there, a grandmother, mother, and 3 children. They'd had eye shine. They'd had sounds occurring. The house got a swipe. Something came along, gave it a smack. Very, very loud. The one son was playing his stereo, evidently too loud for whatever was outside. It yelled at him. They had a watermelon stolen. She had come home from the grocery store and had a watermelon in the foot, in the passenger area of the car, down in the foot area. Took the cold groceries in, put them away. It took her 4 or 5 minutes to get the frozens and the cold stuff away. Came back out, the watermelon was gone. She swears up and down, something took my watermelon.
Okay.
The the most interesting part of that was the first day I was down there, we got ran into the carport by a rain shower. And she had about a 13-year-old son, and we're talking, and she's like, well, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, well, I'll kind of give you the whole picture of that later to her. But then the son goes, well, I've seen him. And the lady and the grandma go, oh, no, Trav, you didn't see anything. That makes no sense. You didn't see anything. The abominable snowman lives on another continent. And I kind of, my ears perked up and I go, what do you mean by that? And he goes, it was white. And I go, okay. And they're like, no, Travis, don't tell him that, because they're trying to get somebody to take him serious. And I go, actually, there has been a tradition of a white Bigfoot that this is as far south as I've heard it roaming, but it does roam around in this area from evidently this far south up into, the Salt Fork and further north region. But I said, there have actually been sightings and a purported video of a white Bigfoot taken. And that part just lent a lot of credibility to me, that they would actually try to shut him down, not knowing what I knew about a white Bigfoot. So they're like, what can we do to discourage this thing? And I walked around the house. We found some pet food. They had cats. They were feeding them outside. I said, well, don't leave food outside as much as you can. Get rid of that. Garbage control. We brought a large group twice onto the property and just walked all over the property and in the places where it probably hadn't had a human on it in a while. So I think that's kind of important to send the message that, areas where you didn't smell or sense that there'd been a human, there's now humans around those areas. And the final thing we did, we had those old school style trail cameras that they put out an infrared beam. And if you break the infrared beam potentially can't be seen because it does glow red on the camera itself. And then it uses a traditional flash, a white flash. And I found that those are pretty good discouragers to that situation. And that seemed to help them quite a bit in terms of they didn't find any footprints after that. They said they heard some sounds, but they're further away. So
wow,
ridge.
Wow, that is kind of, you made a great point about them trying to shush the kid up, because who would really think that there'd be a white, because it's not very common, even though I've heard it like you've said, I've heard some reports about of a white one, but man, it's super rare. It's super rare for sure. At least I think so from what I've heard. So
I think it's very rare, but for him to just, and he said they had an access road that went from behind their house up further up the ridge, that he was running it and getting in shape for wrestling. And he said one day it just stepped out in front of him from about 50 feet away, and they both kind of locked eyes, and it kind of gave him a low growl, and he did a 180 and headed back home after that. But
and he dropped about 2 weight classes right there. Right there. Holy
ran
smokes.
Right out of his shoes probably on the way back home.
Holy smokes. Wow. Now that would be quite an encounter right there for sure. Now, so when you go to, the first thing I thought when you said to tell them to put their cat food inside and stuff, I thought, yeah, because then they'll just eat the cats. You know what I'm saying? Instead of the cat food. That's what I thought.
You too. I'd put the cats away.
Oh man. It's so and of course, like, those people don't want to, they just move, they don't want to move. So what can you do to help them? And they probably don't have the means to pick up and move if they're living no matter how many acres they have in that part of the country, it's still, all their money's probably in that trailer up there,
Yeah.
and it's not just easy for them to pick up and so yeah, I could totally see that. So what, is there been anything, like how early did that report happen in your career?
Um, Probably about a year into it.
And so you never heard anything more from those people, or not, or
I stayed in touch with them for about 6 months, maybe close to a year. Had a phone number, so I called them once or twice and just said, "Hey, it's Rusty, just checking in. Having any issues? What's going on?" And then I kind of lost touch with them, and I don't know if it's. I haven't gone back to property records to see if they moved or anything like that, but
Hmm. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if after all these years, as remote as that place sounds, if if activity picked up again, that'd be interesting. So okay, that's a good. So that and you're now the footprints that you found. How big were the footprints that you yourself saw?
they were 16 inches.
Wow, that's
I think 5.5 at the heel. They were a little narrow at the heel, but they were 5 toes, kind of the straight across traditional, kind of what you would people say is a Bigfoot track. So, and most, peas in a pod, boom, 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 5 toes. And it was a really good track. There were two other ones. One was pretty good. The next one you could see that was, and it had come down to an observation point where it could look at the back corner of the house, right on the edge of the tree line. And that was the room. They had a toddler, and that was his room. And they'd said that he'd had a couple, they called them nightmares, where he'd woke up saying his word for monster, and
wow.
crying and saying czar, 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 I guess is what he called a monster. And
So if you put two and two together, that thing must have been looking in the window, checking out the toddler.
it was at least close enough where it could look at the house and look into his window. It wasn't right up against the house, but it was pretty close.
Whew. Okay, so that's a pretty good one.
All right.
That's a pretty good one, I gotta admit. So you got a couple more then that stand out. You better be able to top that one.
Okay, well, you want to hear one where it was actually looking in the window?
Of course, seeing
Okay.
as I am in a window that's too high for anything to look in, so I'm good.
This was down in Vinton County,
Okay.
outside of Zaleski National Forest or Zaleski State Forest. MacArthur's the closest town. Lady was in her, and again, it was a modular home that had been brought up onto a ridge line, but there were two other homes, within a quarter mile. They kind of knocked out this ridge line and put a couple houses up there. She's sitting in her living room at night, no lights on other than the TV and they had an aquarium that was kind of like an end table aquarium or a coffee table aquarium. So it's like a glass top and then, 8 inches of water with fish in it. So she's watching TV and she notices a shadow at her window, kind of leaning in and looking in at her. She turned off the TV, but kept the aquarium light on, and it continued to look in. So she kind of did okay, I'm just going to pull my blanket up and I'm going to go to sleep. The next day, she found fingerprints on that window, and the top of the window was 9 feet tall. And she said it was literally had its hands on the window and was bending down to look in. So he was a big boy or a big girl. It was a big one. They had, she was a foster parent, and they had a pond in front of their house. And on 2 occasions, the kids, when they were going out to meet the bus, said there was a black man that would be in the pond or around the pond, getting a drink out of the pond. On 2 mornings, they'd seen this big black man. So that house also got smacked at one point, really bad. And they had handprints on another window. That was when I was able to get down there. They'd tried to clean them off. They'd had a hard time cleaning them off, but the thumb size on the print, it was kind of like you got 3 fingers with the thumb at the corner of it. It was the size of at least a silver dollar. It was huge. It's 2-3 times the size of my thumb.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
You wonder how something that big, if it's putting any weight on the window, just doesn't go
Yeah.
through the window.
It had part of the hand on the frame itself and part on the glass. The other thing that happened down there that we actually found, they hadn't noticed it. They'd put one of those chain link dog runs out, the substantial ones that are 6-8 foot tall, like 2-inch galvanized pipe that they use to make the corners. And there's, corner pipe, all the way around it. They'd had a dog, and she said, oh, the dog was going nuts the other night. We found about a 1.5 to a 2-inch bend in that pipe, where something had tried to pry it apart. It popped some of the figure 8 brackets on it. And and we'd found what we thought was the pathway that it was using. It was working up a hillside, then coming along a fence row, and then coming back into their yard. So we found the approach point on that one. Again, it was a matter of food control. We put in a game camera to shoot that path. And the other thing, and we brought the groups on again to just kind of explore, put human trace down everywhere we could. The other thing at that point was there was a back door to their garage on their home. We were able to, I at that point I'd bought a motion sensing floodlight. It was still the old school, you had to wire it in, but wiring in a flood lamp wasn't a big deal. So we put the motion sensing flood lamp on the back of the house for a couple months. And things quieted down for them to a certain degree, but they still had a few issues going on. Mostly, again, it had backed off a ways, but they would hear it some nights, but it wasn't coming up and actually looking in windows at that point.
Now, did you talk? You said there was a couple other houses up there. Did you go talk to them at all and see if they had any activity, or did the people not want you sharing with the neighbors that they were seeing anything?
That was more the case. She was a little concerned, especially with the foster kids, that they might think they were crazy or something like that. And she's like, I don't know if it's going on around us or not, but just, deal with us on this. So no, we didn't actually talk to any of the 2 other houses up there on the ridge. And then there was a tree farm, a Christmas tree farm that led down the hill, but we didn't stop there either. Just did our work with them.
That's interesting, because I'd almost bet that one of those other people had probably had something happen, and they're probably the same way. Well, we don't want everybody think we're crazy, which is terrible that everybody has to think that they're going to be looked at as crazy if they come out and ask for help, or just say, hey, there's something going on. I mean,
I think with the impact culturally, or I don't want to call it the impact, the the interjection of Bigfoot into popular culture, it might be a lot different than it was back in the early this was like 2003, 2004.
Yeah, just 20 years. Yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. I mean, people don't even seem to think twice now when you want to talk about the subject. And, like everywhere I go, especially like ghost wise, if I see a place that I think, oh yeah, there's something going on here, I always ask. And people don't seem to be, they're kind of reluctant at first about themselves, but they always get a story about somebody else. And then you're like, but you've never, well, okay, there was this one time. So I think people are becoming more accepting of, okay, I'm not going to be looked at as crazy, so which they shouldn't feel that way anyway. But so you guys did the same kind of thing, put away the food, put up some game cam, got out there and put your scent out there, or made your presence felt, and their problems kind of went away too, huh?
It quieted down. They, as I said, they still heard some more distant noises, but it wasn't coming up right up to the house like it was before. And that was over the course of about 2 months, when it was really seemed to be interested in their home for some reason.
Now, how long had they lived there? For a while before? Or?
Just a couple years.
Just a couple years?
Yeah.
And so it just seemingly happened out of the blue. It wasn't something that was always going on.
I don't know. Zaleski has a lot of traditional kind of, it's a spooky woods type thing to it. I think all those houses were about the same age. So it might have been, if he headed to Florida or somewhere south for the winter and he'd come back in the spring, all of a sudden his favorite place, his favorite route to get from one place to the other, all of a sudden there were 3 houses in the way. But,
that might be pretty irritating.
that
would be the Bigfoot version of construction on 71, right? Go. Okay, that's another great one. So is there another one that sticks out?
I've got one more. It's in Ashland County. So
okay.
A little more north central Ohio.
Okay.
Again, a family, they had a daughter. They also had an exchange student staying with them. Started with snowy footprints. They actually were able to track it, and it was coming back, kind of avoiding their property, then coming onto it, and then going back behind their garage. About a month later, they walked down into some woods that had, she said that there was kind of a neighborhood rumor that it was possibly used by Satanists. Who knows? That's just kind of one of those outliers, I guess. Yes. But it was a bizarre woods. I'll give it that. And they got growled at. They had a couple other things. They saw fleeing wildlife, and I'll mention that in one of my incidents. Something blocked the path. They walked in. When they were walking out, there was a good sized log across the path. Following evening, she went outside to let the dog out, and heavy, nasty smell. And at the corner of the house, there was something crouching down there, and she said it stayed there. She went inside, got the rest of the family. They came out, they noticed the smell, but whatever it was gone. They had a nice little orchard, a pear orchard and an apple orchard, about 3 trees of each. It was getting raided pretty regularly. um, on the back sides away from the house, and from 5 feet to 10 feet. It was kind of like it would take a band. Something was taking a band of fruit off these trees. They really liked the pear trees, evidently. Her husband had a sighting of something rummaging around in his pickup truck. They would take their household garbage. He worked at a place where they had a big dumpster in there. Like, yeah, why pay for garbage service? Just bring your 2 bags in and we'll throw it in the dumpster. And something was rummaging around in them one night. He said when it went from leaning into the pickup truck and rummaging to standing up, he said it was every bit of 8 feet tall. He said it, the bed of the pickup truck was still, belly wise type of height. So,
jeez,
yeah, it was very tall. What else happened there that was interesting? That was about it. But they'd had kind of a 2 or 3 month experience with this thing. And so we did the usual stuff, put a bunch of us on the site, put down our scent and our presence, tried the game camera again, talked to them about garbage control. And the other thing we did was the next season we put rattle cans in the fruit trees, like, just old pop cans with some gravel in them, and just hung them on string.
So when something went to grab it, it made a noise.
Yeah. And they had a farm pole lamp that they didn't use all the time, that they started to use more frequently, instead of just the wall sconces and things like that around the house. Their situation got worse for a little while, but then seemed to, I don't know, I think whatever it was may have moved along, but it quieted down for them. But it definitely, between the growls and that, for whatever reason, I think this one was a little more aggressive and liked where he was or she was, and didn't want to move along. So, they had some smell incidences, and never cited it again, but some noises, growling, and things like that were still going on.
Now, how there's been in the last couple of years some pretty well documented and reported sightings around Ashland.
Mm-hmm.
How, and I don't know if you're familiar with where those took place, but how close to the city was it?
It would have been, it was north of Ashland.
Okay.
Is it Huron County that touches Ashland?
I believe so. Yeah. To the northwest. Yeah.
So it was kind of up in that northwest area,
okay.
More so, but 15 miles or so, maybe, to Ashland.
There's some, south of Ashland, it's kind of swamp. It gets real swampy and stuff there. And I could always, and I take that path or that road from Mansfield to Ashland. I think it's 42, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 42. And you get to that one part and you're like, boy, if I was going to break down at night, this is not the stretch that I would want to break down. But yeah. And that's in people, I don't think, especially around here, think, oh, there's no Bigfoot in Ashland. Yeah, there's too many reports, and it's historical report. Like there's reports from clear back in the 50s, I think, farmers with reports of those creatures before, the Patterson, before it really became a popular or in vogue type thing to say, we're talking about Bigfoot, then you're just like, here's this big thing antagonizing my livestock and stinks, won't leave me alone type of thing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to just around that area there, that Ashland area up to Oberlin and the Firelands up there. So
even south down into Loudonville and that area.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty squatchy area, for sure. If I
Mhm.
can use that term. But so as you're going out then and investigating these reports, did anything ever happen to you personally while you're out there?
Oh, let me see. Well, the footprint finds. One one investigation we were doing in West Virginia, we were up on a hillside, and it was a very sharp cliff, and then a creek ran along the base of the cliff, and never a visual. Had something bipedal walking up that creek, following, kind of paralleling us. He's, but we had the high ground, which is really odd. I think they usually try to get the high ground on you, but was forced into us being on the high ground. But you could hear it splash, splash, splash. And then we'd stop and talk and it'd be quiet and then it would splash along. So um, I've had that happen. Had something yell at us once. I don't know, if it was a person, it was a deranged person. But
Listen, in many, like I tell a lot of people that come on and tell their stories about getting yelled at or they're finding footprints out, and they're like, well, it could have been a human. And I'm like, I gotta be honest with you, a barefoot human leaving a 16-inch footprint or yelling and screaming, that's to me scarier than than a Bigfoot.
yeah, that's true.
Because a person, you never know what they're what they're going to do. I mean, us people prove it every day that we're unpredictable. And if you're crazy enough to be out there walking barefoot in sometimes freezing cold weather, um, you're crazy enough to do just about anything. Um, so you said you had some other experiences. Were they not while you were out investigating?
No, I think that's when things seem to happen. It's when you're when you're not intentionally out looking, then sometimes things happen. Um, and these were mostly centered around the Bellefontaine, Urbana.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
is it Mechanicsburg or Milton? It's Mechanicsburg, I think.
I believe you're
Uh,
right. Yeah.
so and it actually, although my intention wasn't looking, it had been drawn to that area by a couple reports that I'd done down there. And so I was driving and the sun was going down. This hill was backlit and something really tall walked across the road. And I was quite a ways off, a quarter mile maybe, but it's like, whoa, that looks pretty big. So um, kind of got a friend that they're a good friend when you can go, hey, I need you to kind of recreate a Bigfoot situation with me. So I said, just walk, took them there, waited for the right time of the day and said, just walk across this road and, I'll call you and let you know when it's time to do the walk. And went back down, got as close as I could to the area when I was coming up that hill. And it was like, yeah, that is way out of the range of a human. It could have been, but and then not far from there was a time when they had some railroad tracks closed, so I'd kind of found my own little detour around them, and they have a moraine there, and I was coming down this moraine. There was it curved. There was a tree lot to my left, and then you kind of curved and came around the tree lot, and then it opened up into a field. And I look in this field, and there's like a herd of deer, maybe a dozen of them, just tearing across this field, coming out of that tree lot, heading right for my car. And so I slow down and I'm watching them cross the road, and I'm looking back, watching the trail of them. And I looked in the tree lot, and something came out of that tree lot. I wasn't close enough where I can say absolutely it was, but it was dark, it was big, and it did that move. One of your guests had mentioned the move where they dive, and that's when I think they go down to all fours. I think they I think they can get along pretty good on all fours. But this thing literally, when I think it realized that there was a car sitting there watching its dinner go across the road in front of it, it did a dive, and it was an uncut field, just hay type grasses in it. But it was tall enough where it dove into that and went on all fours, and I lost sight of it. Just an odd circumstance, but but I mentioned also the one in Ashland, they had some fleeing, one of their walks, they had a bunch of deer and even turkey come running toward them instead of away from them.
That doesn't happen often.
Yeah, unless there's something more scary on the other side that's forcing them that direction.
I mean, I've seen deer come because they get confused. I've never seen turkey. Now, I'm not a hunter or anything, but we have turkey all over. I've never seen turkey come running at somebody. I guess unless they're going to get you, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I've never seen or heard of turkeys running at somebody, because usually, from what I understand is, they take off, but if they're coming at you and they need to get away, they're just going to take off and they can fly. I mean, turkeys can fly a little bit, and which people, I guess, don't realize that, but they don't. They roost in the trees at night. They don't, they don't climb up the tree. They gotta fly up there. So, but so when you saw the one cross the road, though. I mean, obviously, it's where you were driving to. And you got up to where you thought it crossed the road. Did you get out and look, or did you?
I slowed down quite a bit. It was State Route 161.
Okay.
So I didn't feel comfortable just stopping right in the road. And I looked and didn't see anything. But no, I didn't put on an investigator hat and look at the berms and see if there was any evidence or anything like that. It was kind of like,
Well, and I wondered, how, because obviously, you were intrigued by the subject, you loved the subject, and now you're doing investigations. If there was a part of you that like, yeah, I still want to go out and just hang out and maybe have my own experience, or if you get enough of it because you are talking about it and investigating and stuff.
There were times, I think the more that I dealt with people that had these kind of, either nuisance incidences or just startle, just sudden encounters. And I saw the impact it had on some of them. It made me question if I really wanted to come upon something like that. I mean, there were folks where they exhibited some of the classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder in terms of, I don't do this anymore. I don't go outside when it gets dark. I mean, it had made some big changes in a few of these folks' life that I just wasn't so sure that I wanted to have something alter my perspective that much. Now, I did go out. We used to, back before Salt Fork was a magnet, we spent many a night out there night fishing. Rangers didn't mind us.
You and the Nitty Gritty Band?
Yeah.
Fishing in the dark. Okay.
Yeah, just night fishing, officer. And they're like, okay. But they knew we weren't going to be trashing the park, and the fact that we were there might divert somebody from trashing, the park, whatever area we were in. So But I spent many an overnight in Salt Fork, never saw anything, heard some odd things, but that's about it. And then the last thing, this is again from that Urbana Bell Fountain area, and this is a perfect example of when you're not looking, sometimes you find something. It was golfing, and there used to be a golf course right beside Mad River Mountain, the ski area.
Okay.
And right on the edge of that, a pretty good hillside, and probably had maybe one too many beers. We're on the backside, and one of the guys is, "Oh yeah, Rusty, he investigates Bigfoot. Hey, Rusty, do a Bigfoot call for us." So I let out a pretty good yell call, and literally within about 5 seconds of that thing, we hear thump. And I mean, it was a big tree that something pushed over, or it was the 1 in a million chance that after somebody yells, a big tree falls in the forest. It was down below us where we couldn't see it, but it was a big tree. And those guys went, talk about some wide eyes when that happened.
Oh, geez, wow. Listen, I don't believe in coincidences so much that just wouldn't even be right. You know what I'm saying? Like
I think there's cause and effect there, but I didn't see the cause. So, I was the cause, but I didn't see the effect. All I know is that a fairly large tree fell at that point and crack, and thump down below us.
What I found, I found your answer interesting about whether or not you really wanted to run into something that would change your perception or maybe change some of the things you did. Considering that you really do, you're out investigating real events, finding 16-inch footprints and understanding that some of the things that are going on can only be really caused by one thing unless somebody's pulling an elaborate hoax. So you pretty much understand that there's something out there that that we call Bigfoot running around, and you still feel like it may change your view of things if you've experienced one up close and personal. That's saying a lot. Like I know there's sharks. Okay. I guess maybe they would be the similar. Like, there's sharks out there, but until one comes up and brushes against you in 2 foot of water, you maybe don't think too much about it. Maybe. I guess that would be a similar way to look at it, right? I don't know.
I just reached a point where I wasn't, it was like, be careful what you wish for type of thing.
Yeah. Now, and you can answer this however you want. You could not answer it, but I have, through hearing interviews and stuff and talking to some people, it seems like the BFRO has the hard stance of this is just a animal out there, that there's nothing else to it. Is that and that I have heard other BFRO investigators say that they were not so much asked, but some of the reports might have been changed if there was something else that the eyewitness experienced against their wish. They didn't have it. There was nothing they could do about it because there was a narrative that wanted to be followed, or that was what they believed in. Is that something that you came across? Is that something you heard about, or is that or do you feel that way too, that it's just something that is just a animal out there running around?
I never directly experienced that, but yes, I would say that is kind of the stance there, is that it is strictly flesh and blood animal. I have a hard time with people I've talked to, with things that I've read, especially people I've talked to, when it gets kind of weird. Not that just seeing a Bigfoot isn't weird in and of
Yeah,
itself,
yeah.
but when somebody says, it told me keep that gun in your, do not, don't pull that gun, or and somehow it communicates that. I'm not quite sure what exactly is going on, but I think I don't know if it's multiple things that have been kind of umbrellaed as Bigfoot, or what, but yeah, there are some some things, even like the fossil record, bodies, bones, how does a flesh and blood animal eventually not be found that way? And so I don't know if it's a mixture, or if there's a flesh and blood animal out there and there's a trickster spirit that he goes, I think I'll be a Bigfoot tonight. That usually gets a rise out of the people that I want to mess with. But
And
there's
it's
something
funny.
beyond that.
It's funny you say that, is because that has been that's like becoming a little bit more and more of a common thread of the no, with the whole alien abduction thing, and people saying, well, they use the name, Jesus, I invoke the name of Jesus Christ and go, and then the alien supposedly disappears, as if it's, how would an alien know or care Jesus or God? You know what I'm saying? That it must have been demonic. Um, and I mean, it's people can throw out there to see what sticks. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've talked to enough people on the paranormal side to know that there's got to be paranormal stuff going on when it comes to ghosts and spirits, and what the origin of those things are, or what they mean is, I don't know. I don't know. Same with UFOs and aliens, and I mean, it all seems like they're all part of what's going on. And now, I don't expect to see a Bigfoot climbing out of a UFO, but it could. Who am I to say?
There's reports from Pennsylvania that happened. So
I know. Look, I didn't think the Browns were going to win yesterday either, and they still did. So, anything is possible. you know.
one of the things, and it was kind of out there, and a lot of my fellow investigators didn't look fondly on it, but at these troublesome places, I would go out and I would speak my intentions to whatever or whoever was listening to me. And I'd say, leave this family alone. You're not welcome here. And by the way, the person that lives in this house will shoot you if they have that chance. And I just speak it to the woods.
Well,
I don't know if it had a difference or not, but I would speak those intentions and let them know.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, and I tend to think that, or believe, and I have no basis for this other than just hearing about people's experiences, is that whatever Bigfoot or Sasquatch is, it's more than just a gorilla or an ape type. I think it has some more human characteristics, whether it's even a offshoot of a Native American tribe. Okay. And they are a species of quote unquote people. Like, if think that, why wouldn't I think they could understand some of the stuff that, like, they know what a gun is. They know, okay, I may not know the words this person's talking, but I understand the the level of intensity, or the level of, peacefulness in this person's voice or whatever. So I don't know why couldn't, and the same thing goes if we think people have uh, abilities to, like, read minds or tell the future, or have special abilities. If these creatures are not, if they're part human, why couldn't they have those same, that we think humans may have? So I just think people that just don't consider everything or that anything's a possibility probably are missing out on some things, whether it's directly related to Bigfoot or not. I think they're definitely missing out on some things by not having an open mind. So, and coming from Crawford County and having an open mind sometimes is hard.
Those long sight lines in Crawford County, there's Bigfoot just know that. I think they like hills because they know they can get up and over a hill so much quicker than we can that, if they have to get away, it's easy. Up and over a hill and they're gone. You don't know where they went.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of people that can hide. There's a lot of people that hide for a long stretch of time when everybody's looking for them. I don't know. I don't think it'd be hard at all if you didn't want to be found and really nobody's looking for you. You know what I'm saying? Just a few crazy people are out there looking for you. But Rusty, I'm glad you reached out to me. I'm glad to hear these experiences and stuff that you had. I mean, I think it hammers home, especially here in Ohio, about how rich the history is when it comes to Bigfoot or Grassman or whatever you want to call it being here, and probably how many sightings just haven't been reported over the years. It probably blow our minds to really consider, and especially you're talking like the Bell Fountain area. That's not an area where a lot of people think Bigfoot. You know what I'm saying? Even though the land, I don't know, because I went to Urbana for college, played football there for a year. So, I mean, it's farmland. There's all kinds of, it's nothing like the eastern part of the state topography wise, but there is plenty of water, plenty of food, plenty of places to hide. And, but it's just not the first place you think of, so that's interesting. Now I kind of want to drive back to Bell Fountain, Urbana area and just kind of hang out.
I imagine they're just passing through, but
yeah. Well, that's I'm thanks for sharing that. I'd be curious to hear, especially from the western part of the state, any of our listeners have any more experiences over that way, because like I said, that's a part of the state you don't really think about Bigfoot, but it makes sense that they'd be there. So. But thanks for coming on, and thanks for sharing some of your investigations and your own personal experiences. And you thought your experiences were minor. I guarantee you, there's a lot of people that'd like to have those couple sightings.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, I think, ultimately. And I appreciate your time, Shane. It was fun.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.